are not correct based on a single mistake, so that none could see it until his hand was removed. What is that figure? What was the mistake in some of the figures?
1843, they were a year off.
Right? So we find that they're a year off. At 1843, their reckoning of the year 0, that mistake was hidden from them, and that it was as God had wanted, and that it affected some of the figures. It doesn't affect this figure, but it affects 1843 into 1844. Figures, right? But it's a singular mistake, and I want to point this out. I saw that the truth should be made upon tables, that the earth and the fullness thereof is the Lord's, and that necessary means should not be spared to make it plain. I saw that the old chart was directed by the Lord. He says it again. It was directed by the Lord, and that not a figure of it should be altered except by what? Except by inspiration. I saw that the figures of the chart were as God would have them, and that his hand was over and hid a mistake in some of the figures, so that none should see it until his hand was removed. This tells me very clearly, all of the controversy over these subjects, unless you're inspired, you are not to touch that number or that date 677. Unless you have inspiration, that date should not be altered. It is as God had directed. To me, that's plain. That's clear. I don't understand how that can actually be controversial, unless and it doesn't matter even if James White himself declares that this figure is wrong. Unless he's inspired, we are not to change. We are not to change that chart. And why is that important? Even if we believe that these figures are not important for us to understand, when we start to take away certain numbers and figures on this chart and make them optional, starting with this beginning, it affects how we understand. It affects our confidence in this chart when it comes to the end. Many Adventists are not going to look at this chart because of the problems with that number 677 and the mistakes, the unknown many mistakes that we might find in this chart. When Sister White says there was one. There's one mistake. And it was made clear in the 1850 chart. But this end time truth of the first, second, and third woe of the trumpets at the close of Earth's history is on this chart. Why is it in Adventism today that we don't understand Islam and the third woe? If we just reason, if we understand why it is, to me, it's clear. The reason why we are not speaking about the first, second, and third woe and Islam and the seven trumpets is because we are so apprehensive about this chart. But we can remove all of the apprehension. No one has any authority to change any figures on this chart unless by inspiration from God. Clear? We need to understand this truth. That Islam is the focus of end-time Bible prophecy. That event is September 11, 2001. When we see those events taking place from that sacred history of 1798 through 1844, when we see a repetition of that sacred history, it means that Jesus is about to come. That the latter rain time is right now. And the Day of Atonement is closing today. There is no, we literally don't have time to undermine the truths, the beginning of Adventism. Because right now we're living at the end. And we're vacillating. We're so unsettled on what the truth is because of so much confusion around us. But if we study it, it can be clear. If we study, God will reveal to us where is the right path.
I just wanted to say, if you look at the span of time, from the beginning of time, say creation or Noah's day, to here, and put a percentage mark of how much time from 1844 to 2001 or 2011, is very small comparison. So when it says those times will happen in rapid succession, as compared to the other, it is, but for us, maybe it's not. But we need to be careful to see that.
But what we are saying, and we've been saying this is the final generation. These events are already in full swing. This is it. This is the final generation. And it is clear if we understand and study these things. It's clear. Just this past week, I was listening to the radio. One of the presidential candidates on the Republican side, I forget her name, but she was saying in an interview, she said, if we have a financial crisis in the world, you are going to see a world financial system. You are going to see a one world government. It's already here. It's here. The people in the world know it and are preaching about it and giving the warning, and Adventism is fast asleep. What does it mean that Adventism has no say in the events of the end of the world, and politicians and statesmen, they are more clear and their voice is more heard and more clear about how close we are to the final events of Earth's history?